Hey everybody, it's Sunday, so that means it's time for story time. I have with me this week a red-eyed tree frog. Now, this is one of my favorite tree frogs that we carry here at the store because of their amazing colors. So, you look at this guy, he's got bright red eyes. This guy's actually a little bit more orange. Sometimes we call that Halloween. But typically, these guys are known for the big red eyes, their bright orange feet, and then blue across their sides. Now, right now, this frog is a dark color green because his lights have been off for a couple hours now, and they tend to darken up at nighttime, whereas during the day, they become more like this color green. So this is actually the type of color green that I see out of most of the red-eyed tree frogs during the day, and then at nighttime this, because they blend in with leaves. When they are looking to hide, they tuck their legs under themselves like this. They close their eyes and put their head down, and they literally look like a leaf and are the shape of a leaf. Most of the leaves where they come from are bright green. So again, daytime they're going to look more like this, and nighttime they look more like this. Now, this is a type of defense called like startling. Basically, if they get disturbed by a predator, they're going to startle them by showing these bright colors. So they open their eyes, they stretch their legs out, and they show these beautiful blues on the side. They show the bright orange toes and then the bright reddish eyes. And that's meant as a warning sign to predators because typically in nature, bright colors mean stay away. Unless you're a bird. Bright colors usually mean come here. It's how a male is trying to attract a female. But in the frog world, that's a big no-no. These bright colors mean you better back off. I'm a toxic animal. Now, this is just a form of mimicry because they are not toxic. Although they live in the areas where poison dart frogs come through Central and South America, they aren't actually a poison dart frog and they're not poisonous like that. It's just a form of mimicry to scare off other animals. Now, just like most other frogs, they are nocturnal, so nighttime active. They have these giant cat eyes that help them look around and be able to see very easily at nighttime, where they're going to hunt a variety of insects. These guys will literally hunt any insect they can find, whatever can fit in their mouth, and just like any other frog, we usually use the distance between the eyes as a form of measurement. So, however big that distance is about how big we can expect their food to be, even a little bit larger. They have very, very sticky toe pads. This allows them to hang on very easily. And especially where they come from, during breeding season, they like to be near vernal pools or even like year-round ponds if they can. And they hang out on the leaves up above them to then be able to have their eggs drop into the water. Now, usually a female is going to have somewhere around 40 eggs. And something they do that is really cool, I'm completely forgetting the name of it, even though I just looked it up. But basically, they can force the eggs to develop faster if they are in danger of predators. So this helps in a community where there's a lot of predators that could be eating their eggs or their tadpoles. They'll actually start to develop faster as a form of protection. Now, red-eyed tree frogs are pretty common in the pet trade. And when I was in Panama, they were very common where we were staying. We were there working with Project Golden Frog, doing some research on frogs and their natural habitat. And on our back lot where we had our trailers that were like housing our frogs and our insects, there were hundreds of these guys just hanging out all over the place. The way that we see toads around our yards here in Central America is where they see frogs. So they kind of see them as a common animal even though we don't. We see these guys as a very exotic pet. So it just goes to show you, depending on where you are in the world, an animal can either just be a common thing or even a nuisance, whereas to somebody else, it's a very, very exotic pet. Now, he's poising himself right now to jump. He looks like he's looking at the camera, might recognize that he sees himself, but for the most part, he's looking for something to jump onto because they do like to go to higher surfaces to try to climb. He did just try to jump off my hand, but got a little stuck, which tells me I need to add a little bit more water to my hand. Now you gotta ask yourself, why am I adding water to my hand? This is because typically we don't handle amphibians. If I'm going to handle amphibian, there's two ways I handle them. One, it's with a latex glove that's non-powder based. That way they're not getting anything on them. The other is I get my hands wet with RO water that has equilibrium in it. That way whatever happens to absorb in their body is just water. And I tend to not use things like lotions or anything on my hand, so I know that my skin is free of any toxins. An amphibian skin is a lot like a sponge. It's porous. They can breathe air and water through this if need be. And because of that, they can actually absorb stuff up out of your skin, and it could make them sick. So I just like to get my hands wet with RO water or equilibrium water, and then that helps them to stay nice and moist. If I feel like he's going to get too dried out, I do have a cup here with water in it, and this will help him. So on that note, since he's looking so attentive and looking almost like his stuffed animal counterpart here, which we sell here at the store, we're gonna go ahead and get started. It's March, which means St. Patrick's Day is coming up. We have another St. Patrick's Day themed book. This time we have Leprechaun Gold by Teresa Bateman. So we have a green frog, we have our green chair, we have our themed room. We're gonna read our St. Patrick's Day book. So here we go. Donald Odell was a good-hearted man who could do a bit of anything if he put his hand to it. He took work where he found it and earned enough to keep food on the table and a roof over his head. He cared a little for wealth and did not seek it. True, he lacked a wife and family. This caused him some sorrow, but there was time enough for starting a family in the future. Still, when he saw a wife give her husband a loving smile or a child grasp his father's hands, his heart felt an emptiness that the work could not fill. One day, as Donald was walking through a high meadow on his way home, he was startled to hear a cry for help. Hurrying toward the sound, he soon found himself by a fallen tree that bridged a bubbling stream. There, trapped in the water by the tree's branches, was a leprechaun. He must have been crossing the stream and slipped. Now the water slapped over the leprechaun's head, and between gasping for air and yelling for help, he was nearly spent. Donald Odell stepped out onto a key branch and snatched the leprechaun from the tree's grasp. The poor wee man was shivering and wheezing. Donald Odell shrugged out his sweater and wrapped the leprechaun in its warm woolen folds. Then, tucking him under an arm, he hurried home. It was only a moment's work to kindle a fire and put the kettle on. Soon the leprechaun was sitting before the blaze with his fingers curled around a steaming cup. "It's a kind-hearted man you are entirely, Donald Odell," the leprechaun declared. "And you'll find me properly grateful. The saving of a leprechaun's life means a gift of Leprechaun Gold." If he expected thanks, however, the leprechaun was sorely disappointed. "I have enough for my needs," Donald replied. "You can keep the gold for yourself." The leprechaun was dumbfounded. Never before had a man refused Leprechaun Gold. He pleaded with Donald Odell, cajoled him, debated the issue, and finally demanded that the man take the gold and be done with it. But Donald would not be swayed. Finally, the leprechaun prepared to leave. "But be assured," he told Donald Odell, "you'll accept the gold one way or another." The next morning, Donald found a pot of gold on the doorstep. He shook his head, carried it to the nearest fairy mound, and left it there. That afternoon, he reached for his coat, only to find the pockets weighed down with gold coins. He shrugged in the coat, walked to the fairy mound, and turned his pockets inside out. So it went for the next week. Donald found gold everywhere he turned, in his shoes, pots, wagon, even his breakfast porridge. The path to the fairy mound soon grew well-worn. Then the day arrived when Donald Odell went from dawn to dusk without seeing a single gold coin, barring that which he rightfully earned rethatching a roof. Sorry. "I expect the leprechaun has given up at last," he decided, feeling rather lonely. The next morning, however, Donald had other things to worry him. When he went to milk his cow, Letty, he found the latch to the byre undone and the cow gone entirely, even though he was sure he had latched the barn door securely the evening before. There was nothing for it. He snatched a rope and took off, following the animal's tracks as they led through the woods and meadows, hills and hollows. Indeed, he spent the whole day following after the beast. Night swept in with evening rain, and Donald could no longer see the cow's tracks. He looked like he would have spent a damp night in the dark woods. He sighed and was about to settle on a tree when an unexpected breeze whipped a branch across his chest, turning him to one side. From this new angle, he spied a light through the woods. Hurrying toward it, he soon saw that it was a window, lamplit and warm. He pounded on the door. When it opened, his mouth dropped open as well. Standing in the doorway was a beautiful woman. She smiled warmly and, glancing at the rope in his hand, said, "I don't suppose you might be the owner of that lovely cow that wandered into my barn just a few hours ago?" Dumbly, Donald nodded. The woman waved aside. "It's cold, you must be, and wet and worn as well. Come away in and warm yourself by my fire. I'll feed you dinner, for your cow's already taken care of, and the two of you can spend the night in my barn." Delighted, Donald accepted her invitation. Over dinner, he discovered her name was Maureen, and she had lived there for several years, tending her old granny. Now Maureen was alone. Donald's heart was touched, but he found it hard to hear her words over the sound of dripping water falling in the various pots and pans scattered over the floor. "It's the strangest thing," Maureen said. "The roof's been sound for years with nary a problem, but this evening for some reason it began leaking horribly. I expect I'll find someone with the skill to rethatch it for me, but I don't know how I'll afford it." "Ah," Donald Liddell replied with a smile, "consider the job done, and paid in full as well with your hospitality. It's fine meal and the good company. I'll do the rethatching for you on the morrow and gladly." Sorry, our little frog friend's trying to get away. A little more mist. And I want to get my book wet because I got it from the district library. Maureen smiled and thought, well, that was that. That night, Donald Liddell slept in the barn with Letty, and he was up at the crack of dawn fixing Maureen's roof. She hitched up her skirts and joined him. Oddly, the old thatch didn't look too bad. Still, by the time Donald Liddell was finished, the only leak left was in his heart. He was taken entirely with Maureen. They courted for a month or two and then were wed. Donald Liddell was happier than he had ever been before. "And not even Leprechaun Gold could have been better than this," he remarked to Maureen as they sat outside their cottage together. She hurried as the night grew cold, and Donald went to check the barn. "So you are happy," came a small voice. "Aye, I am that," Donald replied upon discovering the leprechaun sitting on a railing in the byre. "But I'm surprised I am to see you. I thought I had offended your honor by refusing the gold." The leprechaun smiled. "Do you think cows wander free and branches blow and roofs leak with a wee bit of help? You've been paid in full, Donald Liddell, for the saving of my life." Donald looked puzzled. "I've taken no gold from you," he insisted. There's more than one kind of gold in this world," the leprechaun said, tipping his hat. It's a way I'll be then," he continued. "Give my best to your bride, Maureen. She's a woman with a hair of gold and a heart to match." And with a wink and a laugh, the leprechaun was gone. The end. So, this was a really great St. Patrick's Day book. Expanded on our leprechaun lore a little bit, just like our last one. But this one really taught us that sometimes money isn't just the value of something, it's found in the things around us, like good people, or a roof that doesn't leak, or having a table full. So, although we think of gold as being this thing that's going to make us rich, sometimes being rich means what's in our hearts and things that make us feel fulfilled. And so, that is the real story of Leprechaun Gold, is being fulfilled through filling your heart, not filling your pockets. So, hope you enjoyed this book. Hope you enjoyed learning about our little red-eyed tree frog friend. And we'll see you guys next week.